President Trump said the first time he saw Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on television, he said to himself, "That gal's pretty good." She took on an incumbent member of Congress from Brooklyn and whooped him, and now she has fashioned herself as a leading spokesperson for the Democratic Party, and we wonder why they are in shambles. Here to help us sort it all out is Bill Walton. He has his own podcast and show called The Bill Walton Show. He is a retired executive, having led a private equity firm and has worked with some of the great iconic entrepreneurs of the 21st century. Bill, welcome back to The Truth.
Hey, John, thanks. Nice seeing you again.
I don't even know where to begin. Let's talk about AOC. That's what the pitch was. Some people think she's the leading Democrat contender for the 2028 presidential election. God save us.
Well, she's a contender for the Democrat nomination. That's different than winning. She's got
100%.
Although she's got a 60% approval rating among registered Democrats, and I think some 10-15% of them say she most represents their values, and so she's got a constituency. And
Well,
as you pointed out, as Donald Trump pointed out, she's good on TV, and
yeah,
she's got charisma, and that sometimes that's all people want.
yeah, that's a la Bill Clinton. That's how he got elected. It wasn't based on his morals, that's for sure. But when you talk about Democrats, 60% saying that they align with her policy, isn't that their policy that you've worked, you've earned, you've saved, you've invested, you've done well, and now we want it?
Yeah, give it to us.
That seems to me to be what all this is about. It doesn't seem to be about, it was about electric cars before Elon Musk got chummy with Trump. Now they don't like electric cars anymore. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just seems to be all about transfer payments and the untouchable components of our federal budget, which are trillions upon trillions of dollars in transfer payments.
I think you're exactly right. And, she's out on her oligarchy tour, fighting oligarchy. She's out with Bernie Sanders, touring the country, and they're getting pretty big crowds, 25, 30,000 people. But, if you look at the stuff they're demanding, this is your point. They want free medical care. They want free college tuition. They want essentially free housing, and they're going to tax the billionaires to pay for it all. And they're now calling economic rights or human rights, and they go on and on and on. But yeah, I mean, we've worked for it, and but now it's their turn to take it.
Well, what they're saying is that communism is a human right, and I just don't know that it works. The only places that it appears to me to work are in fascist regimes. Clearly, China is a communist state. I guess Russia is a communist state with some measure of capitalism mixed in. But, China works, but they kill their political opponents. They disappear in the middle of the night, never to be heard from again. And they listen in on their citizens' phone calls, and they assign them a social score which determine what levels of freedom and travel rights they have. Yeah. Is that how people really want to live?
Well, obviously not here, although, socialism seems to work in D.C. pretty well. There's a cute cartoon going around with the photo of AOC looking very fetching, and she says, I think the caption is, "Who says socialism doesn't work? All my friends in D.C. or all my socialist friends in D.C. are millionaires."
I think there were millionaires before there was socialism.
Well,
but we have
the point is they're socialists. They're advocating socialist policy gets them a lot, and that was one of the things about the USAID that Elon Musk shut down. Is that if you look at where that money was really going, it was going back to the Democrats and a lot of their so-called NGO operations. So it's
Right.
a money
Stacey
machine
Abrams,
down here.
$2 billion.
How much?
Stacey Abrams got, and her NGO received
Yeah, yeah.
$2 billion that Doge is trying to claw back now. And it just shocks the conscience that that could happen in our country, but it has, and I just don't know if it can be tamed. What do you think?
Well, I think that's why we voted for Trump, and I think that's why he brought Elon Musk in. Now, Elon's run into the buzzsaw that he knew he would encounter because he's uncovering a lot of bad stuff, and that's the money pot for most of the people here in Washington. But I think Trump's on the game, and he's got a much better cabinet. I know you saw the sh- photographs yesterday. He's got a
I
very strong
watched it.
cabinet, and they're all doing a pretty good job trying to deregulate the economy.
They are the best of the best.
Yeah,
He recruited the best and the brightest.
yeah.
And are you familiar with the turf war that is being waged by Steve Bannon
Oh,
against
I am.
Elon? To me, it's like, Daddy, Daddy, pay me some attention. You're giving it all to Elon. And if anybody thinks that Elon Musk is going to go anywhere, I think they need their head examined, because I think that Elon Musk is Donald Trump's most favored person in the entire government today, because he has become a lightning rod, and all the negativity is going to Musk and
Yeah.
has taken it away from Trump.
Yeah, he works and he's also effective. Yeah, Steve was the big deal after Trump was elected in 2017, a very big deal. But he only lasted about 3 months in the White House because I think all he was doing was mainly claiming credit for Trump's victory, which Trump didn't like. And now I think Elon's in and Steve's a bit out in the cold. I know that he's still close to Trump, but. And hopefully Steve's view doesn't prevail because the thing that Elon Musk is doing is not only rooting out costs, but he's also advocating, that we use technology to win the economic race, and I'm all in for that.
Well, and not only that, but also to reorganize and redo the way the federal government is doing business. I mean, in order to retire from the federal government, I'm sure you've read the same things that I have. It takes 9 months. It's still with pen and paper, and the forms are kept in a vault in some sort of a salt mine underneath a lake in Lake Erie or God knows where. And I don't remember how many millions of pages of retirement papers that go back like 75 years. The people have got to be dead, but we're retaining all this paper because it's just the way we've always done it.
Well, and one complicated retirement, I guess one employee requires 6 boxes of paper. And so and I don't think they've got a computer in the down there. So
No, I think you're
yeah,
right.
they've now discovered that, and they're digitizing it, and that's probably going to go away. But yeah, that's a great example of ossified federal government. I like to think of it as a 19th century technology, 19th century bureaucracy trying to solve 21st century issues. And I think getting rid of stuff like this and digitizing it makes a ton of sense.
Going back to Bannon, I know Steve Bannon. I don't know him well. We're not on speed dial, but we do uh, periodically communicate. And I have to hand it to him. He is a brilliant individual. Harvard graduate, worked at Goldman Sachs, was very successful as a filmmaker in Hollywood, and now I'm envious. He has millions of followers on his podcast, The War Room, which is also broadcast on a network. But he is always having a fight with somebody. And when he was in the White House in Trump 1.0, he and Jared Kushner were at each other's throats continually, I'm told. And now, and Kushner was very close, obviously, to President Trump. And now it's Musk is his target. And it really does feel like sibling rivalry to me. Instead of fighting with Musk, it would be nice if Bannon would celebrate his accomplishments and cheer him on so we can tame this federal government that currently spends $2 trillion a year more than it takes in.
Well, I think Trump's done a pretty good job managing that rivalry because he that's the in some ways that's his management style. He likes to get people. Um, that was one of the things they did on The Apprentice, get people doing the same job. And in Bannon's case, he's a brilliant orator and really revs up the base and gets
Hmm.
people excited about the different things he's pushing. And obviously, Elon's got his skills, and I think Trump has done a pretty good job of letting them both do their thing without either one of them getting in the way of each other. So.
I just read a poll last week of likely Republican candidates for president. Guess who's leading the charge?
Well, I don't know. Would Steve Bannon be the AOC of the Republicans?
Exactly. He had 26% approval out of a
Yeah.
list of probably 10 or 12 people. Don Jr. got 1%.
Yeah.
J.D. Vance was second with about 12%. But, Bannon's been at this for a long time. And as I said, he has developed a huge audience that are insanely loyal to him.
Well, I've been on his network a couple of times, and it's got a big following. But the thing about all these 2028 is kind of light years from now. I mean, the sort of things that can happen between now and then are infinite, and so it's fun to handicap people, but I think we really don't have to get serious about this till maybe we're 18 months out, and then we'll know where we are. We'll know
I, I, I totally agree, but it's just fun to
yeah, it's
speculate.
so much
I,
fun. I,
I
I
know
like the idea of Bannon versus AOC. That would be that would be entertaining.
that would be entertaining. I'm not sure it would be good for the country, but it would
No.
be entertaining. One thing is for sure, if Bannon's got any chance of going anywhere, he's going to have to get a personal trainer, a new tailor, and a barber. I mean, Trump calls him Messy Steve, and he is. I mean, when you see him in person, you think, "Oh my God, this guy is a homeless guy, a homeless person." I don't get it. So
It
where do
seems to
you?
work.
It seems to me, and I'd be interested in your view, Bill, that Donald Trump is not remaking. He is reshaping the United States economy in real time before our very eyes. When you consider all the moves that he is making, um, which could potentially lead to the elimination of an income tax in our country, it is very exciting. But he is also walking a very high tightrope, don't you think?
Well, he is, but the only piece of it that's problematic is the tariff piece. When I look at the rest of the things he's doing, the big beautiful tax bill he wants to have passed has got a lot of good things in it, and both in terms of taxes and also regulatory relief. His wanting to fire up the energy industry again. Chris Wright's over at Energy, and I think Doug Burgum is in Interior, and they're going to revive our historical edge in shale, and Chris Wright made his fortune in the shale business, and of course he's also now pushing nuclear. We're pushing the right sources of and he is pushing the right source of energy at a time when Europe and the UK are unilaterally dismantling their economies with wind and solar, and then the other things he's doing. I think the DEI piece is massive because I think you and I probably agree. America was built on the ideas of meritocracy. You work hard, you get ahead, you do a better job than the other person, and you end up reaping the rewards. Well, with DEI, it was all equity and equal outcomes, and hiring and keeping people based on identity and not on what they were contributing. That's a catastrophe. You can't run a modern economy with that kind of hiring and employee policies. So I think maybe one of the biggest thing he's done is rooting out DEI, and of course it's a deep cancer not just in the government, but in a lot of big corporations and universities, et cetera. And that it's going to be hard to do, but it's certainly worth it.
Well, I agree with you. Not only is it the wrong metric, but it is intensely divisive, and
Hmm.
it causes us to uh, fracture as a country, in my view. But when you look at the advent of tariffs, and McKinley did this in the at the turn of the 20th century, and with pretty good success. I think a lot of the trade imbalance that we have is traced back to historical reasons that it occurred the way that it did, particularly with the EU, when we intentionally wanted to help rebuild Europe in the
Yeah,
after World War II.
yeah,
We allowed the disparity in trade because it would help prop up the European economy. In
right.
2025, does it make any sense for BMW to sell us a car with a 2.5% tariff and we sell them a Ford or Chevrolet with a 10% tariff? That just seems to be inherently unfair in
Well,
today's.
it is, and I think what happens, it's like all these government programs. They put something in place when it might even be a good idea, and then they don't revisit it ever, and so it stays and it's ossified, and it ends up being a real problem. Yeah, I think him taking a pickaxe to that is exactly the right time, and we did help Europe, Marshall Plan, et cetera, and we also did the same thing with China, bringing them into the World Trading System, WTO, and all the other advantages that they're supposed to get as a developing country. Well, they're no longer a developing country, so it's time to revisit that. And
I
so he's
totally
he's
agree.
taking on
I
the
think
hard
that's right.
ones, and he's willing to take the heat.
Well, I think China is a separate entity in and of itself. Uh, Robert Spalding, Peter Schweitzer, Gordon Chang believe that we are at war with China, and that you look at the evidence, it's pretty overwhelming. I talk about it here all the time. Spy balloons floating over our country, Chinese police stations inside the United States, over 100,000 acres of farmland bought by China surrounding our military bases, spy balloons floating over our country, fentanyl flooding the southern border, 150,000 fit military aged men crossing our border illegally from China. And no one comes or goes from China without the knowledge and consent of the CCP. Not to mention that our leaders, many of them, have been co opted by the CCP. Not the leaders, but their spouses are doing business with them, and it equates into the millions of dollars. And then our most iconic U.S. Uh, industries and companies are doing business and are tethered to China in a significant way, not the least of which would be Tesla, Delta, Coca-Cola, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan. The list goes on and on. And oh, let's don't forget the pharmaceuticals, where 90% of our medicines are made in China. I mean, it's a real problem. I hope Trump gets it, and I think that's why he is being so aggressive against China to try and rein this back in.
He gets it. He absolutely gets it. I mean, the pharmaceuticals thing is words fail, really. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies basically moved everything over to China. Merck, I believe, has got $1 billion research center outside of Beijing. And yeah, we can't make aspirin, we can't make antibiotics, we can't make basic medical supplies. And we saw a glimpse of a bad future when they started talking about withholding that during COVID.
Exactly.
So yeah, we got to unwind that. And I think the number I'm hearing is there's almost $5 trillion of investments that have been committed or being considered as a consequence of his getting companies to start reinvesting in manufacturing in the United States. And that's not going to happen overnight. But boy, is that a step in the right direction.
But if it just happens in the next 4 years, doesn't that truly usher in
Yeah,
the golden age? Because
yeah,
think of all the jobs that's going to create. Tens of thousands of construction jobs just to build the factories, not to mention the employment that will be permanent when the factories flip on the lights and go to work. It just seems to be a tremendous step in the right direction to me. And Trump has said that, maybe we can eliminate the income tax. Boy, what a bright day that would be.
Well, I'd like to get rid of the income tax code. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. It's an
that's the
industry.
most intrusive document in American, if not world history. I mean, the IRS knows everything about us, and with absent the income tax forms, they wouldn't know that. And so I think there's a privacy issue as well.
Well, I love Steve Forbes, and I think the fair tax that he has
Yeah,
advocated for more
yeah.
than a decade is the right way to go. You think about it from a policy standpoint, it just it checks all the boxes. It encourages savings. It does not prevent consumption, but it does put some sort of a self-discipline lid on it, perhaps, which I think is probably a good thing, would be a good thing for our country to get away from some of the materialism that has seeped into our culture. But as you point out, it gets rid of the Internal Revenue Service day one and the hundreds of thousands of regulations and rules that we have to live by that if you even know about them, you can't understand them half the time. They're so complicated. It feels like a noose around our neck or an anchor on our feet while we're trying to run a marathon.
Well, it is, and we're probably all violating some piece of the tax code we've never even heard of,
Hmm.
and so we're incredibly vulnerable to that. The other piece of this is that we've been a society that unfortunately has drifted into pushing consumerism, and not a society that focuses on making things. And Trump is talking explicitly about getting America back to a country that makes things. And if you think about all the major civilizations and through world history, they make things. They're not known for their consumption. And I spent a lot of time in private equity building businesses, and this idea you can separate the design of a product from the manufacturing of the product is, I think, a false dichotomy, because you learn a lot when you're making things that go into the design for the next iteration of the product. And so by cutting ourselves off from the manufacturing knowledge, of really cutting ourselves off from one of our big sources of innovation. So there are a lot of reasons to do what Trump's doing, and it can be a long argument, but there are like 20 reasons why this makes sense.
Absolutely. And as you highlighted, energy costs have already come down,
Yeah,
and fossil fuel and the cost of oil is embedded in virtually every single product that we buy or consume.
yeah,
And if we can get the price
yeah.
of energy down, it's already down 25% from a high, I think, of 82 down to somewhere near 60 or maybe right at 60 as we were doing this interview. That's a 25% reduction. I don't even think we've gotten going
Well, I
good
had some
yet.
fun. I used to go to the Coke conference, and I remember one year they were protesting violently. They found the hotel we were in, and they were protesting outside. And Charles Koch noted that all of their signs were made out of products that Koch Industries was manufacturing. And they'd brought tents to camp out, and Koch also manufactured the tents, or at least provided the raw material.
The
And so
irony and all
we
of
started
that.
looking at all these things that are out there that they were dependent upon, and the oil and gas industry had brought them most of it. It was really almost comical.
Well, and you look at the signs that we see protesting Elon Musk, whether it's in Colorado or South Florida, they all look the same and they're all on the same card stock. Wonder who's behind all that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's Soros, but there are also a lot of other billionaires. Yeah, it's completely coordinated. These are not volunteers. These are paid operatives.
They are paid operatives, and it's really, when you think about it, sponsored terrorism. And I'm wondering when we're going to get to the head of the snake, trace the money back up the chain, and find out who are the people that are paying for it and what consequences are there going to be for those people. There should be some serious
I think we
consequences, in my
know.
view.
One of the things we haven't talked about is Pam Biondi at the Justice Department, and our talk show guy who's
Uh,
going in for the #2 job in the FBI,
Dan Bongino.
yeah, and we've got a lot of people now in the intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard, we've got a lot of people in there that get how corrupt everything's become, and I think that we're going to see, not right away because you got to have your ducks in order. I think we're going to see many, if not indictments, at least certainly a lot of people outed for the things they were doing during the Biden administration, and during the Trump administration, and before that Obama.
Sure.
I think the cavalry has come. It's embedded, and my hope is they're doing the work now to make the airtight cases against these people.
We know the greatest source of optimism that I found lately is that, I don't know if you read this or not, but I read a month ago that Dan Bongino had to recruit 50 FBI agents to provide his personal security while he was sitting at his desk at the FBI and commuting back and forth from home and protecting him in his residence. Now that's got to tell you that he's making some people awfully anxious and nervous. And I hope you're right. The Americans crave accountability today.
Yes.
And we see all these things, and there are no
if
consequences.
Trump doesn't do that, that's going to be a big problem.
Including who took a crack at him in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, 2024. It has all the similarities of Dealey Plaza, and we can figure this one out without waiting 60 years. Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, they have to find out who tried to assassinate the leading candidate for president of the United States in Butler.
I believe they're on it. I also believe that they don't want to come out half-baked.
Yeah, for sure.
I think they want to have everything, but the Butler thing, I mean, they power washed the roof within 12 hours. They cremated the body. The evidence that we have of the evidence of destroying evidence is unbelievable. I mean, somebody was covering that up.
Well, and
I think we're going to find out.
We know that two people died that day. Roy Compitator.
Yeah. The fireman or the
yeah. I didn't pronounce his name right, but rest in peace. Thomas Maxwell Crooks. It is my suspicion, with some evidence, that he may not have been the trigger person. If you zoom in on the body on top of the AGR building, the shooter had a scar on his ear. Crooks did not have a scar. You look at the shirt that the would-be assassin had on. It is similar, but different from the shirt that we can see Crooks was wearing an hour before the attempted assassination. If you compare the videos, we could spend a lot of time talking about it. If Lee Harvey Oswald was the key to unraveling the Kennedy assassination, as I believe that he was, and they silenced him by having Jack Ruby take him out, I believe that a guy named Maxwell Crooks is the key to Butler. He was from Mesa, Arizona. He drove a white van to Butler. It was titled to a Mesa, Arizona company called Urich Ammunitions. Maxwell Crooks showed up in the Ukraine. He also showed up in Portland, Washington, Atlanta, in the riots of 2019. And he was also linked and believed to have known Roth, who was the West Palm Beach alleged assassin. And his parents filed a missing persons report for him the day after July the 13th. He had worn gauges in his ear and had removed them, and they appeared to have left a scar on his ears. The shooter had a scar on his ears, Thomas Matthew Crooks.
So is he still missing?
He is still missing, and there's been nothing said, seen, or heard of him. And I keep talking about it because I want to raise Inspector in the public minds.
Well, this seems to be right up on Gino's alley, since he was involved in protecting a president. It's going to make it's going to do America a lot of good, and maybe do him perform a great public service if he can help us get to the bottom of this.
Absolutely. Bill Walton, host of the Bill Walton Show, a patriot, an entrepreneur, and a very successful one at that. Thank you for coming on The Truth today.
Great
and
talking.
I hope you'll come back soon.
I can't believe our time's up.
I know it.
We're just getting going.
It went by in a hurry. You know how that Father
Yeah,
Time keeps
I
nipping
do.
at your heels when you're on radio and television. But have a great rest of your weekend.